I want to start with a story which, for me, just so well demonstrates this idea of what I call a leadership moment. And I'll say more about that later on. This is the story of a man, a social worker in the Bronx in New York named Julio Diaz. And this took place some years ago, not too far long ago. Julio was coming home from the late shift in his job and got off a stop early on the subway in the Bronx to go to his favorite diner. And as he tells the story, as he's getting off the subway onto the platform, he's accosted by a man, a mugger, with a knife, who demands that Julio hand over his wallet. So, probably like most of us, Julio goes into his pocket and he hands over his wallet to this mugger, who's actually a very young man. And as the mugger turns to run away, Julio says to him, "Wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. It's really cold outside today. If you're going to be mugging people all night, you might as well take my jacket while you're at it." And so the mugger, in disbelief, of course, uh, for some reason, accepts the jacket and then turns to run away again. And Julio says to him, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. If you're going to be doing this for the rest of the night, I mean, I don't know if you had dinner or not, but I'm going to my favorite diner. Why don't you join me? And so the mugger agrees to join him at the diner. So they go to the diner, have a nice warm meal, nice conversation. Julio asks about the young man's life and kind of what brought him to this chosen vocation of his in this moment. And then the check comes for the meal. And Julio says, I'll happily pay for this meal, but you have my wallet. Do you mind handing me back my wallet? And the young man hands over his wallet. And then Julio says to the young man, "Now can I have the knife?" And he hands over the knife. So, I can't relate to the second part of that story. I can relate to the first part of agreeing to hand over my wallet. But the ability, the presence of mind to see that moment for what it could potentially become, and not default to what it typically would become, as I said, is to me an act of leadership. There's actually five of these leadership moments every day that we come across. They're not all as dramatic or life-threatening as that one. Sometimes they're unseen. They're a moment where we stand up, speak up, step back, voice a truth, whatever it may be, and oftentimes do so at our own risk, which is one of the hallmarks of leadership. That we're often put at risk, not necessarily physically. Maybe it's organizationally or psychologically or financially in some way, reputationally. But he had the presence of mind, and you can't fake that kind of thing, right? You can't say, okay, this is what I'm going to do when I face that kind of moment. You have to see in that other person, in that moment, a potential, a possibility. Otherwise, if you're not authentic about it, who knows which way it could go? The authenticity, the ability to kind of reframe that moment for himself as well as for the young man, and the ability, to be willing to entertain some risk. These are all the hallmarks of leadership, as I think about it, as we'll talk about it here. And my guess is that in big ways and small ways, you all have had and experienced these leadership moments. Maybe you didn't engage them when they happen. Maybe you shied away from them. And that's actually not a bad thing. Sometimes that's the best way to survive and to live another day to lead.